Hello everyone. I'm excited for this video. And this is going to be the underwriting kind of session that I'm gonna walk you guys through. I'm still new to the commercial space, but I really enjoy underwriting a lot of deals, and I like to see each kind of phase that is involved with that. So I'm going to walk you through one of our basic models that we use, especially for apartment syndications and apartment like value add models. So that is kind of like our business strategy is value add opportunities. So we would be looking for like Class B properties, like 10 to 100 units since we're still new to the space, and working towards bringing that up to, let's say, like a B plus A minus style apartment, so we do kind of like the overall phases as far as like the property description, the investment cash flows, the operating cash flows, um the reversion cash flows, the property returns, and then the investor distributions and contributions, right? So yeah, it's kind of a cool thing to look at when you're kind of underwriting like a cool deal and seeing it all kind of come together at the end. And then seeing like what your returns are and seeing if that's feasible for like your syndication process. That's really interesting to see. So I'm just gonna show you guys like what we've kind of came across. So I just want to give a quick shout out to Adventures in CRE for kind of providing these outstanding models, because it's really hard to kind of develop a model yourself. You can do like one like kind of like a back of the envelope kind of underwriting model, but this kind of takes it to the next level. So this is kind of just one property that we underwrote. And I'm just gonna I kind of blur out like just the other information, but this is kind of a cool deal that we got through. So kind of up here, I don't want to show like the name of the place, but this is like the description of the entire property. You're gonna see like the address on there. You're gonna see the like kind of like the unit amount, the acreage amount, the floor area ratio, the gross building area, total parking spaces, parking ratios per unit, the year that it was built, and then the year that it was renovated. So those are two important dates. You'll see the surface parking spaces, the structured parking spaces, the net rentable area, the amount of units, and the average number of stories. So yeah, let me just hop right into this. So the description is really good to kind of verify, just to make sure that it's something that fits like your property description, basically. What size property are you looking at? Not too much of a high square footage, or are you willing to take on bigger projects, right? So that kind of walks you through there. And then this is obviously really important. What is your sale date? So what is your exit date on this strategy? Is it a 7-year hold, 10-year hold, 5-year hold even? So define what your sale date is, right? So yeah. And then also stabilization month. So kind of rolling up the rents, so how long is that construction period going to last? And when are you going to stabilize the property with all of the tenants inside, right? So that's really important. And then investment cash flows. So you're going to have your purchase price, your closing costs, any other fees involved with the acquisition is going to be laid out there. Then you're going to have your hard costs, so your renovation costs. So you see here it's like $3,000 in rehabs per property. So I mean, sorry, per unit. So if you have like 50 units, then it's going to be 150,000, right? So for instance, this one, it's quick math. Come on, what is this? 16 units, right? So 16 units is going to be 48,000 in renovation costs. So that's that. And then architecture and engineering fees, it's going to be like 2%, 3% of the, it actually depends on the complexity of it, but I've even seen like upwards of 5% architect engineering fees as a percent of the hard costs, right? So this needs to be correlated directly to what the hard costs are, because if you take like the overall project costs, there's a lot of miscellaneous costs in there that don't apply to the actual construction of the property, right? So always make it as a percentage of the hard costs. And then permitting is going to be obviously the dollar amount times the number of units, and then construction management fee. So you can adjust this if it's like 5%. So you see this will change right there. So 5% will change. So if it's 3%, then it's 3. Excuse me. So yeah, then you're going to have, so all of your project costs without financing is going to be laid out here. And then the project costs with financing will include financing costs, obviously. So these are origination fees, appraisal fees, closing fees, right? So all of that's going to be financing costs. So yeah. And then here we go as a breakdown of the sources and uses of the funds. And it's also cool because you can see this as a percentage of the net rentable area and per unit as well. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, and then as we work down here, you'll see what the total uses are and then what the total sources are. So those should always match with any project. Those should always match. Just to make sure, it's kind of like the balance sheet in that aspect, you know, assets and liabilities, you know. So sorry, assets and liabilities plus owner's equity. But yeah. All right, so that's that. And then you'll see here as the initial financing, if you have the first loan on there, the senior loan, that might be funded first, and then you'll see the other stuff. So here is a breakdown of the funding order. So always the first funding order is going to be the GP equity. In most cases, sometimes it might even be the LP equity. So just make sure that you're open and honest about like how the funding is working within any deal. And also where you're spending all of the LP equity, you know, like make sure that you're providing that information to the LPs and making them kind of I would say less stressed about like, where's my money going? What is it being used for? You know, so tell them like, oh, we're using this percentage for like the renovation costs. This is percentage for the closing costs, the down payment, or whatever costs that are associated. So break that down for your LPs and tell them like where their money is going, right? Yeah. And then, so that's the total amount that's displayed there. Then you'll see your senior loan involved. So either it's going to be loan to cost or loan to value. So if you want to do loan to purchase price or loan to value, you're just going to adjust this until that matches the loan to value here. I mean, you can do it manually too on here, but that's kind of how this model has been developed. But obviously, there's a lot of customization that you can do with this, and we've done a good amount of customization with this as well, but I'll kind of walk you guys through that as well. Here we have total sources, and if you're also confused what's happening on this right-hand side, so this is your projections. So this is literally month by month, year by year projections of all of the cash flows, right? And all of like the investment cash flows, the operating cash flows, those are all projected for the entire hold period of the project, basically. So yeah. And then you'll see here when the loan payoff is. So your loan payoff, if you're refinancing, is going to be once the construction period ends, right? So your lender is probably going to want to verify like when the construction period is going to end and when you're going to refinance the loan, right? So that's going to happen like when the construction period ends, basically. So yeah. Oh yeah, and let me show you that up here. So basically it was like the method of the investment cash flows. So if you have 48,000 in renovation costs that you're doing, right? Either you're going to do that on a schedule basis, on an S-curve basis, on a straight line, or a detail, right? So this is kind of broken down as far as how you want to uh construction how you want to pay the contractor period by period, right? So if it's scheduled, then it's going to be a fixed amount every single month, you know? If it's straight line, then it's going to be like kind of just like a lot in one period and kind of broken down into just like 3 or 4 months kind of even. If it's an S curve, it's going to gradually increase, you know? So here it starts at 1,000, goes to 6,000, 16,000. And then the other thing is detailed. So you can actually customize it the way you want, basically. So in here, if you click detail, you just say, oh, we're going to do like 10% of it in the first few months, and then we're going to gradually increase that once we see substantial completion of the construction, you know? So that also kind of is more credible for like the investor and investing into a GC, you know? That shows that the GC is actually staying true to his word, completing all of the scope of work on time and doing it in a timely manner, right? So that kind of alleviates a little bit of stress for the investors if you want to do it that way. Or if you have a great relationship with your general contractor, you've done so many deals in the past with them and you're really like feeling good about it, then you can just give them like a scheduled basis, you know, just like 4,000 a month, you know, and this is the period. I trust you guys to finish the project in this period, and the deal is done from there, right? So yeah, so this is a good thing to look at, is what is the method of the payments, right? Yeah. And then as we work down here, you'll see like the refinancing loan, so subsequent financing. Essentially, you want to make sure that you have the similar terms as the first loan. That just kind of eliminates a lot more confusion, because if you have the same terms as the first loan, it makes it a lot easier with the underwriting. Otherwise, you're going to have to adjust a lot of numbers here and there. But yeah, so 75% LTC. So when they're saying LTC, that means the total project cost, basically, right? So if you look at what this amount is actually being multiplied by, it's that LTC times the total uses of funds, right? So it's directly taken from that amount. So the total uses, as you can see, is in line with the total project cost with financing, right? So you'll also have to ask about that, because sometimes they include the financing costs with the total cost, or sometimes they include it outside of it, right? So talk with your lender if it's like the total property value, or if it's the total cost involved, like including the renovation costs. If there are renovation costs, you're going to have to submit some type of contract verification with your contractor to the lender. So just make sure whatever scenario that you're going with, that you talk with all parties involved. So yeah. And then you'll see here also the debt yield and DSCR. So DSCR stands for debt service coverage ratio. It's essentially the net operating income of the property divided by the debt service on the property, the monthly debt service on that property. So this kind of shows, sorry, the annual debt service on the property, because the NOI is also annually. So basically this shows what that refinancing credibility is, basically. So if your lender says, oh, I have a DSCR requirement of 1.1 to 1.2, right? Then you would obviously meet this requirement because you're exceeding that. If you have a debt yield requirement of, let's say, 7%, then you would be meeting that as well. So always verify what your debt yield and DSCR requirements are with your lender. All right, so that is that. Now we're going into operating cash flows. So operating cash flows is essentially your pro forma, right? So this is your T12 in that aspect, or performa, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of more complex on our end. So we have a lot of growth rates that we apply year by year. Whether it's 2%, 3%, this is kind of the sensitivity of the model. So if you apply this year by year, then you're gonna either increase or decrease your gross levered internal rate of return. And it's always important, once you set it in place, once the final underwriting is in place, always stay consistent with all the numbers that you have on there. Do not change your underwriting once the deal is already like, let's say in due diligence and you're already raising capital and everything's kind of already in place, you know. Never change your underwriting once it's done, you know. So yeah. And your growth rates, usually for post renovation, we have it at like 5%, sometimes upwards of even 10% for the first year. And then we just do like 2 or 3% throughout the years. And then so this beginning roll and this completing roll. So this is what I was talking about. So whatever number you put here, so if I put 24, my my rents and my leasing and all of that is going to happen after 24 months, because the construction period is going to be 24 months, right? So all of like the financing, the refinancing is also going to happen after 24 months. So always make sure that that's kind of accurate there. Custom roll, nothing to do about that. So this is our investment type, value add. So here you'll see all of the units involved. So you'll see the different unit types, the amount of units, the average square footage, the rent per unit per month. All of that is going to be displayed here. And that's going to also impact your total effective rental income. So essentially any type of unit that you put in here is going to be reflected right here in the total effective rental income. So always define that too. So effective rental income is everything on the top line revenue, rental income, subtracting out any vacancies or credit losses that are involved, right? So sorry, not vacancies, concessions or other expenses that are involved. So to put it more simple, you're going to have your top line rental income. This is literally your base rental income that you're getting from all of the units. Then you're going to have your concessions subtracted out. This is essentially free rent that you're offering to your tenants. And then any non-revenue units that are literally vacant and do not have any marketing or anything with it, right? So account for all of that, and then you'll get your total effective rental income. After you add back all of your other income, such as ratio utility billing services, retail income, pet fees, parking garage, other fees, chargebacks to the tenant, reimbursements, right? You'll get the total potential income, right? So once you get to that phase, you're going to subtract out now your economic vacancy or your general vacancy and other losses associated with the property. So this is bad credit loss, loss to lease. So loss to lease is essentially like if you're like rolling up the leases, right? And you did some like renovations and let's say some people moved out, you know, as a result of that. And you lost all of that like income from like them moving out, right? That's going to be loss to lease essentially. So always account for bad debt, credit, loss to lease in the other losses. Once you net all of that out, you're going to get your effective gross revenue. And your effective gross revenue is really important because this is what the asset management fee and the property management fee are a percentage of, right? So this is really what good asset managers and property managers strive to kind of maximize this amount, because that's essentially like their payment, right? So a great property manager and a great asset manager will communicate with their with their teammates and do weekly calls and make sure that either they're touring a lot of great tenants around, that the rent rolls are being accounted for, and pretty much things are running smoothly as far as the operations go, right? So this is anywhere from the leasing office to the actual property maintenance team on board, and any types of like necessary improvements or rehabs that are needed for the property. Also communicating like tenant improvements with like the asset management team is really important. And also communicating with brokers as well, like for leasing commissions and other listings that can attract more tenants, right? So if you maximize that top line, you'll have a lot more opportunity to maximize the effective gross revenue. So yeah. All right, so let me get into this. This is going to be kind of a detailed approach right here. So your operating expenses and your retail income. So these two things I wanted to get into because they're kind of laid out in different tabs. So the retail income is right here. So you can add this as another income, and you can edit these formulas and just say that the total retail income is going to be kind of displayed here, right? So that's what I've done here. And if you go to that tab, you're going to have every single one of your units, or sorry, every single one of your tenants laid out here. You're going to have the lease start date, and you're going to have the lease end date, the square footage involved, annual bumps in the lease, rent per square foot per year, and then the annual rent is displayed there. So say if I say like 500 square feet, the lease is going to start like this month, right? 11/11/2022, and it's going to end in 5 years. Okay. So this is going to display, and then obviously what is the rent per square foot? Let's say $15, right? So the total annual rent is going to be displayed here. So yeah, and then you'll see also some recovery income. So if you have some common area, or sorry, this is recovery income, meaning like what is the proration of that lease agreement. So if it's proration, if you're not familiar with, it's essentially how much square footage did the tenant rent out in relation to the total square footage of the building, basically. So how much are they responsible for the common area maintenance, basically. So this can also include like any hallways or passageways that the tenant also utilizes, or any bathrooms or other units that the tenant utilizes. So all of that is calculated into the proration. And that amount is kind of recovered by the landlord, because usually if it's like a triple net lease, they'll be responsible for all the common area maintenance. They'll be responsible for property taxes, insurance, all of that, right? If it's like net, or like net of property taxes and insurance, then it's probably just common area maintenance. And if it's like base year stop, then it's going to be like the landlord is responsible for just the base year common area maintenance bill, and then anything above that, it's going to be prorated to the tenant, right? Or even like anything above that, the tenant is responsible for, something like that, right? And then full service gross is another thing, really favorable for tenants. It's essentially landlord is responsible for everything. Tenant doesn't have to worry about any other expenses. So yeah, and then yep. And then here is that displayed here: common area maintenance, management fees, insurance, property taxes. So you can prorate like all of this to the tenant, basically. So yeah. And then here's some other kind of cool things. So retail leasing cost reserves. So like renewal probability, how say if they did a renewal like last year, for like an extension year, what's the probability of them renewing that lease, So you want to ask about like, hey, are you interested to renew this space? I see that you've shown interest in the past and you really like this space. So then you can adjust your probabilities on that. Yeah. And then this is the other important thing. So as we work here, go back to the underwriting. So right here, you'll see detailed or basic operating expenses. If it's basic, you'll just enter it right here. If it's detailed, you'll see it broken down in a separate tab. So here's really great because you can see what the pre-renovation expense ratio is and the post-renovation expense ratio is. So operating expense ratio is something that a lot of landlords look at because they want to see how much money they're spending on operating expenses. So this shows like basically like it's essentially all of the operating expenses divided by the effective gross revenue, right? So you'll see 23, if I open up a calculator here, just to verify this. It's essentially, oh, actually, it's already in the calculator. So I-195 in underwriting divided by I-183. So if we go to I-195, it's going to be the total operating expenses, right? Divided by 183, which is the effective gross revenue, right? So that kind of shows you like what the how much you're spending on operating expenses. So I would always say like below 40% is fantastic. Below 50% even is solid. Anything above that starts to raise a lot of questions and other questions about the property management team and actually asking them like, hey, what is actually needed with this property and why are we spending this much money on, let's say, the HVAC, electrical, plumbing? Like, why are we spending this much money, right? So that's always good to look at. So here, let's break this down. We have repairs and maintenance. We have just general repairs and maintenance. So this is also important. So if you are an acquisitions team or kind of like the investor yourself, you're gonna want to do above the line treatment of CapEx, meaning that you're including the CapEx budget into the pro forma, basically. So your net operating income is below your CapEx. Usually for like appraisals, they'll sometimes do below like CapEx, below the line treatment. Investors usually, or institutional investors, they always want to include CapEx because that's also a negotiation aspect of it as well. But yeah, so CapEx sometimes is included into the top line treatment. Repairs and maintenance of apartments. So you'll have the cleaning supplies, general repair, painting, trash removal, or sorry, travel removal. Travel removal, that's interesting. I think this should just be trash removal. All right, anyways, landscaping maintenance, landscaping materials, pool maintenance, exterminating, other landscaping fees involved. So that's your landscaping budget. Here's your payroll budget, every single person that you have on board. So this is anywhere from the managers involved with the leasing office, to the people who tour like tenants around, to like concierge, leasing agent, leasing director. So you can have a lot of people on board, but just know that it's going to increase your payroll, you know? So if it's a larger project, that's understandable. But if it's like below like 30, 40 units, you know, and it's kind of manageable, then there really isn't need to have too much payroll. General and administrative. So we have like office supplies, all the necessary equipment with like the office, right? So the reception office is going to have like a lot of equipment. Your leasing office is going to have a lot of equipment. So all those expenses are kind of displayed here. Your marketing budget. So how much you're spending on the marketing aspect of it. Are you utilizing some outside company to do all of your marketing, or how much are you spending on like Google ads, social media ads, right? So all of that is displayed here. Utilities, a lot of nowadays it's digital marketing is kind of taking over like the marketing space, really, like e-brochures, like virtual tours, like e-tenant services, you know, even like all of that stuff is really taking over like the marketing space for real estate especially. So some of the outdated practices are just like handing out flyers or doing like actual brochures. Obviously it's great to have that like on site in the building, but if you're going to do that, like just handing out like postcards and stuff to people, like that's kind of a waste of money and time in my opinion. But yeah. So having a great website is really important too. So website fees, that's going to be displayed here. If you're utilizing some type of like marketing campaign service, then that's also going to be here. But yeah, and then utilities, here we go. So all of this is probably going to be reimbursed back to the landlord if you have that ratio utility billing service in your pro forma. If not, then the landlord is going to pay all of these utilities. So this includes a lot of things: water and sewer, electricity, natural gas, trash removal. So yeah. All right, and then contract services. These are other external parties that you have contracts with. So commission expense with your broker, that's obviously a contract service, right? Elevator service, HOA management, snow removal service, and other services. This is all kind of displayed here. So usually for condos, you're gonna have HOA fees. So the homeowners association is gonna basically ask for like some type of fee, like broken down as far as the square footage of property that you have on the site, or pretty much whatever negotiation that you do with them. So HOA fees are still substantial expenses because they can add up, especially if you have a huge building on site. But yeah. And then some make ready costs. So this is kind of like what we've implemented. So usually for kind of making the room ready, or um kind of like turnover assumptions too, all of that is displayed here. So that also kind of adds to controllable expenses. But yeah, and then you have your management fee, obviously, percentage of EGR, like I mentioned, effective gross revenue. So that percentage, you can adjust that in the underwriting tab. Then you're going to have your non-operating expenses. So this is your insurance bill, other liability insurance, depreciation, amortization. So some things that are not included, actually, depreciation and amortization should be left off of the pro forma, like the NOI pro forma. But it's good to have this as just a record, you know, sometimes just to see what your actual cost is, like your full out cost is with the property, because depreciation is a substantial expense, you know, like the useful life of your property and the wear and tear of your property is going to decrease the value of your property. So yeah, also remember that land never depreciates, so your land is good, but your property is going to depreciate. Just remember that depreciation is all tangible assets, right? So this is stuff that you can touch. This is properties. This is personal property. All of that is depreciable. Amortization is intangible. So this would be like your loan, other patents, copyrights, other brand rights, right? All of that is amortized basically. Property taxes. So essentially you're going to have city, school taxes, county taxes, use and occupancy taxes. Sometimes tax abatements are involved here. So yeah, that kind of breaks down the total expenses. And then to the right here, you'll see the post renovation. So we've applied some growth rates. So this growth rate is directly taken from the underwriting assumption tab. So here in the growth rates, we see the operating expenses on a 3% growth rate year by year. So we've displayed that here in the controllable expenses for post renovation. So yeah. And then Lastly, over here is a quick summary, like a year by year summary. So you can actually do this and fill this out like year by year. So just to see like what the actual growth rate in net operating income is year by year, you can see that. So even sometimes like when you're purchasing a property, you can ask them like, hey, do you have T12s for like the past like 3 or 4 years, you know? Especially if it's a building that's been there for a while, you can ask and verify what the net operating income growth rate is basically. So yeah, that's pretty cool to see. And so that kind of goes through the detailed expenses. As we go down towards the other aspects, so here you'll see net operating income netted out, basically. You'll see the capital expenditures. So sometimes, like I mentioned, if it's below the line, you're going to see these CapEx below net operating income. If it's above the line, then you can include it into your detailed expenses right here, like right there. Yep. And then here you'll see debt service. You'll see the different loans involved. So this is the first senior loan. This is the second senior loan. And you'll see that the payoff for the first one is after a year. And the second refinance loan starts after that first year. And then you'll see some DSCR. Either it's trended, meaning that you're taking into account like the dates involved and it's done like year by year. Or actually trended may also mean like post renovation DSCR basically. So that's that. Here's the cash flow after financing. And this is really important too. So always verify what your market cap rate is in that area, because this affects literally every single purchase price that you pay for a property. So always verify what the market cap rate is, and what your cap rate at sale is as well. So usually we have it at like 1% above. Sometimes it's 0.5% above. But always make sure that your exit cap rate is larger than your entry cap rate, right? So yeah. And then here's your first sale month, basically. So the first fully stabilized month, sorry, the construction end month, the first fully stabilized month, and then the sale month, right? So you can adjust your construction. So if you go back up here to investment cash flows, you'll see that the construction, you'll see that the construction timeline is 8 months in total. So if I increase this to 12 months, right, that bottom line amount is going to be 12, right? So if you go back up here, see, you can adjust what the start and end date of your investment cash flows are. All right, so reversion. What is reversion? So it's essentially like you're selling off your property. What are the cash flows that you're netting out? What are the equity proceeds that you're netting out after that, right? So this will be displayed right here. So you'll also see a nice pro forma, a trended pro forma, which includes the in-place and stabilized pro forma. And you'll also see a sale pro forma as well to the right-hand side. So those are all adjustable, because sometimes, let's say when you're selling it, you're not going to include like some expenses like involved here, right? So that also gives you a good idea of what you want to list your property at, you know? So always remember that market value is equal to net operating income divided by cap rate. So whatever you're listing your property at, it has to be justified, basically. You can take the extra step and get an appraisal report done, like a verified appraisal report, but that also increases your negotiation verification, basically. But yeah, here we go. So you'll see the equity proceeds. You will see the cap rates displayed here on the in-place, stabilize, and sale. So you'll see that since this is a 10-year hold, and the difference between the sale cap rate and the in-place cap rate is 100 basis points, each year 10 basis points increase is going to be added to the cap rate. So this will also affect your IRR matrix. So your IRR matrix is essentially what you want to sell the property, like what year you want to sell the property at the optimal internal rate of return. So we'll see that broken down in these later tabs, but yeah. We'll see the net operating income, stabilized value, right? So as we work down here into the returns, actually let's get to the returns last, but let's go through that IRR matrix that I was talking about, right? So here in another tab, you'll see the monthly and annual internal rate of return calculations. So basically, you're gonna have like your cash flows all laid out in this tab, like your investment cash flows, operating cash flows, reversion cash flows, and you can make this in line with what you have in your underwriting. But essentially, you're gonna have your acquisition costs, loan proceeds, net investment cash flows, your cash flow from operations, your debt service, cash flow after financing. Lastly, your reversion cash flows, that'll be in that last year or whenever you're going to sell it. And then your net cash flow is displayed here on an unlevered and a levered basis. And you can also verify what the internal rate of return is right there. So, excuse me. This is the IRR matrix on an annual basis. You will see that the first year is going to be all of your project costs associated. So this is your acquisition costs, any financing costs, any construction costs involved. All that is going to be displayed in that year 0 timeline. Year 1, if you're going to sell it the first year, then it's going to be what the reversion cash flows are, right? So this will be included of also that last year's net operating income. So last year's net cash flow, basically. So you'll include that last year's net cash flow into your calculation. Yeah. And then you'll see also that the next year's cash flow is displayed year by year like that. So essentially, long story short, this shows you what the optimal year to sell and hold is, right? So right here, if I kind of create this like category here, that what is the optimal year to hold and sell, right? I can try that over here. So it'll be optimal sale year, right? So here I'll do max this. So it'll show, actually no. I'm trying to figure out like what that I think I did it like later on in this. Yeah, here it is. So what is that formula? VLOOKUP max of the n column, and then comma both columns, and then comma 2. Okay. So that's a good good equation to remember. So if you do VLOOKUP of just your IRR column, right? Comma, what table you want to look up, right? So it'll be this column and this column, right? Comma, what amount, right? And then the range, or true, approximate match, yep. And then equal. Okay. I may have messed up the formula. It's all right. How about if I just try this? I should include all of this. No, it's not gonna work. All right, it's probably because my IRR column is not next to the other column, you know? But anyways, you can just look at it and just see what the year is. So the last year in this case would be the hold period, because that's the maximum amounts of profit you're gonna get with this project, right? So Same with here, right? It seems that, yep, the last year again is is the best year to hold. So that kind of shows that like most of the time, if you manage the project well, you're gonna see solid cash flows as a long-term hold investor, right? If you hold it longer, you're gonna see substantial cash flows year by year, right? Because you're gonna benefit from appreciation, you're gonna benefit from growth rates, rental growth rates, right? So all of that is kind of synonymous with like how much return you're getting on that project. So yeah, this is broken down year by year. This is over here broken down month by month. A lot more accurate, I would say, because you're taking into account each and every month involved. Wow, that's dizzying. But yeah, so cool. Um, I'm pretty sure that's it. So that was that for just the reversion cash flows and seeing what the optimal sale year is. Here we go broken down. So I will expand into this section, the property returns and the waterfall structure, into the syndication and raising capital process, because you want to make sure that all of this is explained properly and the distributions and contributions are explained properly to your investors when you're making like your sales pitch, right? So I will also tie this in with our software that we use for syndications. So that is Cashflow Portal right here. If you're not familiar with it, they have a great marketplace where you can find sponsored GPs. You can make your passive deals and your sponsored deals, and you can essentially enter all of your data or your CRM, basically your customer relationship management like software, into this basically. So yeah, it's always good to keep track of like a good Excel spreadsheet to see all of your contacts, you know. I highly recommend that because that shows you that you can send out like email marketing campaigns, you can communicate with them, you have their address and or email address and phone number available. So it's always good to keep that CRM, right? And always start to build that out either in Excel or Google Sheets, and start sharing that with your teammates so that there's not a confusion that, oh, we used like a great vendor in the past. Here's their number. Let's contact them for this project, right? So that's a good way to remember like all of your past projects. So yeah. So here you'll see, I'll go into this in more detail, but this is kind of a basic overview. They just have a marketplace. They also have the investor page as well, the syndicating page and the investor page. So you can create these deals. Obviously, it's certified with the SEC. So there isn't too much confusion about like what you need to submit. The main documents are 506C and 506B, but we'll get into that in more detail. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. This was great. I thought I also learned a lot from this model that I showed you guys. And make sure to check out, oh, also this is like the summary tab. So after you do all of that, you'll see all of your assumptions, key metrics, property level cash flows, all displayed here in like a nice summary tab, right? So that's pretty cool. And also make sure to check out Adventures in CRE. They do a great job of like hosting podcasts. Hopefully I can be involved with that too, but they do a great job of explaining all of their different models. So yeah. Yep. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a comment, suggestion. I'll probably be doing this kind of scheduled webinars, like probably weekly. Like I'll include the asset management webinar, the property management webinar, the underwriting webinar, the syndication webinar, and then also getting into like actual deals. Like I might also show you guys like a cool deal that we did. So yeah, definitely. Thank you guys for watching.